Turning to debate, the honourable member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's always an honour to rise in this House and speak on behalf of the people of Flamborough-Glanbrook. And certainly today on Bill C-20, which is an act establishing a Public Complaints and Review Commission. But if you will allow me, Mr. Speaker, to depart for a moment from the debate on C-20 and recognize that today is my parents' 56th wedding anniversary. And, you know, 56 years is a pretty incredible achievement unto itself, but I need to recognize that this has been a challenging year for my parents because my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer earlier in the year, in January, and the great news is that they were able to remove the cancerous mass, and he has undergone chemotherapy. My mom is a retired nurse, so she was by his side every step of the way, nursing him back to health and strength, and he's made a full recovery, and he is a naturalist and has a picturesque rural property, and now is able to get out about and see his waterfowl and his birds, and he's very happy about that. So, you know, 56 years, there's been ups and downs, no doubt, and but they're still able to walk hand in hand, and so happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. So thank you for that diversion from C-20, so certainly back to the matter at hand. And we know that the bill renames the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission for the RCMP to the Public Complaints and Review Commission, or the PCRC, as we've heard. Under its new name, the Commission will be responsible for reviewing civilian complaints of the Canadian Border Services Agency, as well as the RCMP. So the Civilian Review Commission does improve the oversight, or will improve the oversight, and it is hoped thereby will help both the RCMP and the CBSA to become more effective agencies in their duties and functions. Canadians certainly expect effective oversight of their federal law enforcement authorities, and that is why we support this bill. And so I'll reiterate some of the things that have been mentioned that the bill will deliver on and how that oversight will be provided to Canadians. So there's codified timelines for RCMP and CBSA responses to PCRC interim reports, reviews, and commissions. There's information sharing between the RCMP, CBSA, and the PCRC. There's mandatory annual reporting by both the RCMP and the CBSA on actions to be taken in response to the recommendations of the PCRC. There is the race-based data, which has been referred to and discussed here, which is mandatory under Bill C-20, which provides some additional context. And of course, public education, as well as a statutory framework to govern CBSA responses to serious incidents. So, Mr. Speaker, all of this makes sense and should help improve the transparency that Canadians can expect from their public institutions. And in doing so, the effective operation of these law enforcement agencies. Certainly the RCMP is there to help ensure the safety of Canadians and to police our laws. And the CBSA is there to uphold the dignity of our borders and ensure that the CBSA is both properly resourced and equipped is an important part of doing that. We believe these oversight bodies will help accomplish this. We note that the government is planning to invest $122 million over 6 years and then an ongoing amount for the creation of this independent review complaints body. So we support all that. We do, Mr. Speaker, wonder why it has taken so long to fulfill this original campaign promise from 2015. However, we do know as well that Liberal inaction, delay, and misaligned priorities are certainly something that is not new to Canadians. But, Mr. Speaker, while we're on the subject of public safety, I'm certainly compelled to speak up on behalf of the people of Flamborough-Glanbrook and indeed Hamilton and Ontario and Canada to talk about the alarming increase in gangs and in violent crime that are plaguing our streets. So, Mr. Speaker, there was a statistic that was recently put out by Statistics Canada on gang-related homicides, and it confirmed that there's been a 92% increase in gang-related homicides across Canada since the Liberals took office. Wow is right. It's an alarming number. We also know that there's been a 32% increase in violent crimes as well. So these are startling numbers on their own. But what's even more horrifying is to imagine the faces of the victims, the women, the children, the seniors living in our community that are impacted by the notion that this increase in gang violence is out there, the increase in violent crime. And so that's an awful feeling that they have to contend with. And knowing that it's all too close. The communities that I represent are part of the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. And so we feel that increase in gang activity in the GTA and all around us. And we see the headlines, and we hear the stories, and we see the bloody images in the news. And we know that our communities are not immune. We've seen that increase in home invasions, we've seen increase in shootings, and more. In fact, there was a very bloody shooting in broad daylight of a notorious mob boss on the driveway of a home in Waterdown, a community in my riding, which is adjacent to Burlington. And this is a community of 15,000 people. And in broad daylight, there's a gunning down of this mob boss. That made national and international news. We know as well that there's been a surge in violent crime in the Niagara region as well. The police there have spoken about that, and the statistics that were recently reported bear that out. And I would submit that all of this is because of the government's soft-on-crime approach. Like we've seen with C-5, the ending of mandatory minimum sentences for a host of violent crimes. So the message to the gangs and violent criminals from this Liberal government has been very clear. If you do the crime, you won't do the time. You might do some house arrest. But we're talking about very serious crimes like rape and assaults and stabbings and drive-by shootings, gun violence. So it's no wonder that I'm hearing more and more from constituents about the crime that's happening in the community and what's happening all around us. Mr. Speaker, the homicide report that Statistics Canada put out that I referred to noted that 2021 was the largest year ever for gang-related murder, the highest rate ever recorded in Canada. That's quite alarming. Homicides overall are up 3% since 2020, so year over year. And it's the largest national homicide rate since 2005, which means that the 7 years of Liberal soft-on-crime policy have done all of the work of the previous Conservative government, which left our streets much safer. In my home city of Hamilton, the homicide rate is above both the national average and the Ontario average, at a rate of 2.57 per 100,000 people. And this is a consequence of this increasing gang violence. The police in neighboring Niagara region estimated there are 32 gangs operating in the region, primarily operating between the GTA and Niagara and Hamilton and in all the surrounding areas. And the police there say that as a result of this, we're seeing increases in drug trafficking, human trafficking, robberies, home invasions, and shooting incidents. Mr. Speaker, in concluding my remarks on Bill C-20, the bill itself and the necessary oversight it creates for the RCMP and CBSA are good in our view, although a long time in coming. But in the wider context of the state of public safety in Canada, the situation is getting worse. The communities in my riding and across Canada are far less safe. Gangs and violent crime are accelerating at an alarming pace. It is a very real daily worry for far too many Canadians. 7 years of Liberal soft-on-crime policies have taken their toll. And Mr. Speaker, Canadians can count on a new Conservative government after the next election to turn this around, reverse these horrifying crime statistics and trends, and make our communities safe once again. Thank you.